So continuing my top 40 quarterback rankings, I'm moving on to the number 8 and 7 spots, and those are in alphabetical order: Deshaun Watson and Philip Rivers. I think they're two interesting guys to place on this list, and honestly for two very different reasons. Philip Rivers has been a constant in the NFL for so long now. He's just constantly been a very good player for a very long time. Meanwhile, on the other hand, Deshaun Watson played in his first full season last year, so the contrast between those two I find very interesting, and that's why I think this video could be very interesting. Who is better? The vet who's been there forever and has always been great, or the new guy who's only been here for a season and a half, however, he's really flashed when he's been on the field. I find them both great. I think they're actually both two very underrated players, which is why I have them ahead of guys like Roethlisberger, Luck, Stafford, and Goff, because I think they're more talented players than those guys. I think a lot of the reason neither of these guys get the credit they deserve is simply just because they don't get enough media attention. But I find them very talented, and that's why I think they're both number 7 and 8. But which one's 7 and which one is 8? Well, let's talk about it with this play. Let's start things off with Deshaun Watson, and this is a play I really like from him, where it's going to be a cover 3 zone in a red zone situation, and what the Houston Texans are going to do is first run a play action, but then they're also going to have a route right there, and that could be a great route to throw to on this play. Because of the play action, it could force opposing players to maybe not be in the best position that they would like to be in, and it could be very beneficial. And it's actually going to work out perfectly. I mean, if you see what happens, look at how far that defender breaks in at this point. I mean, that Dolphin is totally expecting there to be a run here. He bites into play action, and now he's in bad position. However, for Watson, he is in a bit of trouble. There is a Miami player who's going to be running straight into him. So, for Watson, he does have to make sure that he can make a good throw. However, at the same time, you don't really want to throw on the run, because if you do throw on the run, it makes it tougher to make a good throw. But if it takes you too long to square up and make the throw, then you could take a big hit. And even if you get the touchdown, you don't want to get injured throwing a touchdown, unless it's maybe the Super Bowl or something. That's usually not a trade-off you would take. But watch how he quickly squares up, gets the throw off, but also doesn't have to take too big of a hit. He does have some contact there, but it's not too much. He's not going to get hurt by that, and he also has made a perfect throw. I always kind of beat the drum on, if you have time to square your shoulders up, you do that. A lot of guys can be a bit lazy in doing that. I mean, Patrick Mahomes is the guy who can be a bit lazy in doing that. Granted, it helps that Mahomes can still make all of those throws, and honestly, Watson can make all of those throws. But Watson also knows it's a percentage thing. Why take a 95% chance when you can make it a 99% chance? And that's what he did there, and that's why they scored a touchdown. He may be young, but he can make some very smart reads. And another thing that's really good about Watson is his athletic ability. If this guy wasn't a quarterback, he could probably play receiver or something. He runs so well, and that really comes in handy. Like on this play, it's going to be a cover 2 zone, and those are the routes that the Houston Texans receivers are going to be running, and so several of these routes could end up getting open at the end of the route. A lot of these are designed to be cover 2, so this is a good situation for Houston pre-snap. And as you see, once this ball is snapped, okay, it's working out perfectly. I mean, look at that receiver right there. First off, he's open. So, if you started to make this throw right now, you could already hit your receiver in the middle, not to mention those two receivers in the sidelines are also kind of open. However, there's one way that this play did not work out perfectly, and that is in the offensive line. Watson is in trouble right now. Sometimes the wide receiver, when you get done running your route, you go back and say, Watson, why didn't you throw it to me? But then he said, well, because I was getting hit by a 300-pound lineman. That's why I didn't. But sometimes, even when there's a 300-pound lineman right in Watson's face, he still finds a way to get out of it. Like, watch him right here. He does get out of this and is still able to run over and make a throw for a decent gain. Now, it could be mentioned that maybe he still should have tried to hit the sidelines there. He could have gotten more yards potentially. However, he was still able to pick up some yards. So some people might be saying, well then, hey, point to Rivers, right? He would have looked around, realized I need to throw the ball to the sidelines, and then thrown the ball to the sidelines and picked up more yards in that play than Watson did. However, other people would definitely argue, no, it's actually the opposite situation. Yes, Philip Rivers, if he got to that point, would have looked around and realized maybe there could have been a better read for him to make, but Philip Rivers wouldn't have gotten to that point because he would have gotten sacked. So I guess, you could argue either way on that one. But I also should be clear about something. Just because Philip Rivers might not be the athlete that Deshaun Watson is, doesn't mean that Philip Rivers can't still do a good job of navigating the pocket and throwing when there's pressure. Like right here, what's going to be happening is that the Chargers are going up against the cover 2 man right here. That's the coverage that the Broncos are running. And it's actually good news for the Chargers because they have a receiver running that route right there, which is just a perfect way to beat a cover 2 man. There's a cut in the middle of the field, so it's a good angle for Rivers to make that throw, and it's also, there's no one in the middle of the screen, so it will just be one-on-one coverage. And as you see, once the ball is snapped and the play develops, okay, there's going to be a Charger who's open. So already, once again, this play is working out well until you look over to the offensive line. Should we mention, it's not like either of these two offensive lines have anything too much to write home about. But watch how Philip Rivers is able to calmly wall under pressure, still deliver a strike to his receiver, and pick up a decent gain. So he might not be able to scramble out of the pocket and get as much time as he needs to, but he can still throw when there is someone in his face like that. That is definitely, if you're a Chargers fan or someone who believes Philip Rivers is better than Watson, Watson, that's something that you would argue in this conversation. Rivers has been in the league for a long time, he's seen it all, and he's not going to buckle under any kind of pressure. So what's happening right here is it is going to be a cover 2 man, and the Chargers have a receiver running an out route that will be below those zones in coverage, so again, this could actually work out well. And of course, his receiver will be the veteran tight end Antonio Gates, who, Philip Rivers has definitely quite a rapport with Antonio Gates. They've played together for quite some time. And so after the ball is snapped, okay, you are going to see Gates create some sort of separation. However, once again, there is pressure, so Rivers can't really throw this ball exactly when he wants to, so he's going to have to kind of lob it up a little bit. So that's his throw, and if you see Gates, he kind of has to come back to it a little bit. He makes the catch, but he has to come back to it a little bit. So some people might be saying, okay, well, that was a solid throw, but it wasn't a great throw. However, I say not only was that a great throw, that was a perfect throw. That's exactly what Rivers wanted to do in that situation. At the end of the day, it's not actually that hard to just come back like that and make the catch. He's giving Gates the opportunity to adjust his route if he has to then go over and make that play. A lot of guys in the league probably just, throw that one just as hard, try to fit it through a window, but he didn't have to do that. Rivers trusts that when Gates goes against a linebacker, he can make a play. That's why he made that throw there, and that's why Gates is able to make the catch for the first down. But okay, so those medium range throws, those are a lot of fun, but let's talk about a deep ball. And Deshaun Watson, he can throw a deep ball, he really can. While he definitely thrives in throwing those medium range throws, deep ball is something that he can do. Although also worth mentioning, 5 out of his 9 total interceptions actually came from 20 plus yards down the field. It might be a weak spot of his game up until this point, but that doesn't mean that he can't be making these throws. And watch this play. It's going to be a play action, and they do have a receiver running a deep route right over there that will break into the middle of the field. And so what you're going to see after this play develops is that there is definitely going to be a receiver that is going to get open. So Watson should take a shot deep here. However, there's one problem going on. Once again, there's pressure. So when there is pressure in this situation, well, what do? Of course, you step up in the pocket. But that's exactly what Watson does. He steps in the pocket and delivers a perfect throw where, again, his receiver can adjust to the ball and make the catch in stride and then just walk in for a touchdown. I mean, that's just a fantastic play. Sometimes we see these quarterbacks who get a lot of rushing yards and are very good at running the ball. We kind of think that, okay, well, they're probably not the best pocket passers. That's just kind of the way our minds just naturally adjust. But Watson is actually a master of the pocket. It just so happens that he also is just a great runner. But of course, if we're talking about a great deep ball, Philip Rivers definitely can throw one of those. Like this play, you might remember this play. It was from the primetime game against the Steelers when they pulled off that major comeback. This was that notable play when there was an uncalled, pretty egregious false start that was a touchdown on this play. But a false start is actually that weird penalty where it actually hurts the offense. So, I don't think the Steelers have really too much to complain about. I mean, it should have been called, sure, but at the same time, they're the ones that have to make this play. Basically, what I'm saying is that just because there was a false start on this play, that doesn't take anything away from what the Chargers did on this play. It should have been called, but those are really two unrelated incidents. Anyways, here's how this play is going to work. It's going to be a cover 3 zone, and at first what the Chargers are going to do is have the receivers run those 2 routes right there. It's a simple concept that you will see pretty frequently, however, they have a slight twist on it this time. Instead of the number 2 receiver just going up to the flat and then kind of hanging out there, he's going to start to go to the flat, but then just run straight down the field. It's a cover 3 killer. They're banking on this being a cover 3, and since it is cover 3, this can work out really well. And the reason for that is because look at what's happening. First, that Charger is going to be breaking in, which is going to force the Steeler who is in his area to also kind of break into the middle of the field. So then the other player can just run over top of him, and he could potentially get wide open. But also look at Rivers. One of the problems with there being a false start, actually, is that it also gives the defensive end basically an extra second to realize what's going on and jump quicker. I mean, of course, the advantage of it is if you do false start, you're able to get your hand placement better, but either way, there was still pressure from that right side, so it probably hurt them more than helped them. But if you look at Rivers, since their left side of the Chargers line did a very good job, he's simply just going to walk to the bottom and then make a great throw for a touchdown. He's a master of the pocket as well, and he can make some great deep throws as well. Once again, just like Watson on the last play, he made a perfect throw, hit his receiver in stride, and they picked up a touchdown. These guys statistically are actually pretty similar. Rivers did have the edge in passing yards. He threw for 4,308 passing yards. Meanwhile, Watson threw for 4,165. But also worth mentioning, Watson rushed for another 551, so you definitely have to take that into account. They were also only 1 touchdown apart. Philip Rivers threw for 32, and Watson threw for 26, but he also had 5 rushing touchdowns, which gave him a total of 31. And Watson had a couple less interceptions, but as a whole, statistically, they're 2 very similar players. And then in my stat points gained per snap, Deshaun Watson was actually better than Rivers. He was 4th in that list, whereas Rivers was 11th. But a decent amount of that, too, will just be scheme and game plan, so it's hard to really put too much faith into just one stat in particular. Although I would say last year, Watson did have this slight edge as a whole statistics-wise. However, one thing that does set Rivers apart from a lot of other players in the league, not just Watson, but pretty much any player in the league, is his timing. He always gets that timing down perfect. Like on this one, it's going to be a cover 3 zone, and to have a receiver running right there, so okay, it will get into a gap in coverage. This could be a play that Rivers should look to throw to. And as you see right here, he is getting ready to cut, and there is a Steeler who's going to be above him, so this definitely means that Rivers could try to make this throw. However, there's also Steelers in front of him, so if he made this throw right this second, for example, it would be an interception. He has to wait until the receiver gets in between those two Steelers who are going to be in the middle of the screen, but that's exactly what he does. He delivers a strike, and it results in a first down. And again, every player will make a play like that pretty much every game, but the fact that Philip Rivers makes those plays so consistently is kind of what sets him apart, and also definitely what he has over Deshaun Watson. That's kind of what this argument is going to come down to, is what would you rather have? A vet who's always going to make the right plays and make the right reads, or a younger guy who maybe isn't quite as good in that regard, but is much more athletic and create some plays in other ways. Like on this play, it kind of looks like it's going to be an RPO, but I actually don't think that it is. Watson's going to make his read very quickly on this one. I think this is actually a designed run. It's a designed quarterback run. But either way, it's the same effect where the halfback could be running to the right side of the screen, and in theory, this will then force the Jaguar who's over there to also run over to the right side of the screen. Now in an RPO, if he stayed down to the bottom half of the screen, then Watson should just hand the ball off to the halfback. However, if he doesn't go to the bottom half of the screen, it does run over to the right side of the screen, then Watson should keep it himself and just simply run to the left side of that Jaguar. And not to mention, while there is going to be another Jaguar in this area, the tight end is going to pull over and then make sure that he's blocking the Jaguar who's on the left side of the screen. And there's a couple things that are going to work out. First things first, the Jaguar edge rusher is definitely going to move over to the right side of the screen, so if this is an RPO, Watson should keep it himself and run over around him. Because while yes, the other Jaguar is going to be the contained man, since they have a tight end pulling over to that side of the screen, they'll be fine. He can make that block and Watson can easily run for first down. However, there's one other problem, and it's going to be that Jacksonville player right there who does a great job of winning his one-on-one matchup and is going to disrupt this play. However, Watson keeps it himself anyways, but is still able to outrun that Jaguar and pick up a very good gain. So that's what sets Watson apart from other players, his running ability. Even without that ability, he's already an upper tier quarterback. However, when you throw on the fact that he can run so well, it just makes him one of the most unique players in the league, and it makes him one of the most exciting players in the league. If I was starting a franchise today and could pick any player I want, the first player would be Mahomes and the second player would be Deshaun Watson. So then I guess, I think at this point you can make your own decision, and I do want you to make your own decision. Let me know in the comments below, who do you think would be better, Deshaun Watson or Philip Rivers for one season? Because obviously, while it would be a no-brainer, you'd want to take Deshaun Watson right now just because he's younger and will play for way longer. Who would you take for 2019 season, Deshaun Watson or Philip Rivers? And me, personally, the guy who I'm going to have number 7 on my top quarterback rankings is going to be Philip Rivers. While Watson is great and worthy the number 8 spot, I just think that Philip Rivers' experience and the fact that he has been in the league, to me that means more than being an athletic player. Watson's stats were a little bit better than Rivers' last season. However, it is worth mentioning that that's his first season as a starter, and we just don't know. Will he regress? There is a chance that he will. And while it wasn't his first full season period, he did play in 7 games back in 2017, and he was dynamic in those games as well. It still is a smaller sample size than Rivers, who's been doing it for a decade and a half at this point. And also worth mentioning, in Watson's one career playoff game, he didn't really play that well. Granted, it was just one game, and also worth mentioning that pretty much every quarterback has a terrible first career playoff game. I mean, even Tom Brady back in 2001 didn't really have a great first playoff experience. He only averaged 5.9 yards per attempt, and he also only had 1 touchdown in the 2.5 games he played. I mean, of course, we all remember his game-winning drive at the end of the game against the Rams, but you know what I'm trying to say. Pretty much everyone struggles right when they get into the playoffs, and even the guys that win the Super Bowl don't necessarily have the performances that we'll see Brady have later on in more recent playoff games. So yeah, that's why I have Philip Rivers at number 7. Deshaun Watson's still great. You could honestly make an argument for him being better than Philip Rivers, but I just don't think at this point in his career he quite is yet. So yeah, that's what I think, and as always, thanks for watching.